station is a town called Moor. In order to reach it, you must build the contents of these boxes. You have enough food for 7 days. But it's not such a serious situation, it would be a good laugh.
There must have been 30 or 40 people in the room recently.
Eventually, we decided to stop arguing and drive from here on the Black Sea right through Georgia and Azerbaijan to the Caspian for a nice piece of grilled bream.
The question I really want to answer on this journey is this. How can the DBS be worth £67,000 more than a DB11? From where I'm sitting, they appear to be exactly the same.
At first, you're forced to say, well, it isn't.
This interior simply isn't good enough in a £225,000 car. Just not even close. You look at the Bentley and you go, that is an interior.
Hurry up! City, the DBS's true colours started to shine through.
This is by far the most powerful car here, and the lightest, and the most sort of progressive. And yet, it just glides along in GT mode, which I'm in now, that touring mode. It's like a hovercraft. Right, there's a small difference there between the DB11 and this. I'm afraid you're going to have to face facts, both of you. You're in wheelbarrows, and I'm in a spaceship.
Ah, an old man imagining he's James Bond. The thing is, if we're going to talk about long-legged, luxurious, continent-crossing GT cars, we're talking about Bentleys. They're the definitive GTs. Whisper quiet, velvety smooth, a hint of massive power weighting, 626 horsepower under my right foot.
Go, go, go! Order 60 in 3.4 seconds, which is absolutely mind-boggling in a car this big. Oh, God. Oh, for God. Oh, come on.
GT car, first and foremost, it's got to be a nice place to be because, by definition, you're going to spend a lot of time in it. And this is a fine place to be. This finish on the centre console, this metal here, is aluminium that's been milled in the same way that they mill aluminium inserts in the back of expensive watches. If I press this button here, I can rotate.
Get out of the way.
The problem for me with the Bentley and the
Get a bloody move on.
heritage and the meaning of tradition, and it's all just nonsense, really. Actually, if you want to talk about heritage and tradition, then the BMW has the strongest, still made in Munich by the same company. It has a 4.4-litre twin-turbocharged V8 developing 523 horsepower. It also has four-wheel drive, rear-wheel steering, and adapters. So close! Rubbish! Forward. Hey. This is a proper car. Not tinsel.
Even though our cars didn't recognise Georgia as a country, we soon arrived in the town of Gori, the birthplace of Joseph Stalin. Outside, we checked out the statue of Stalin, which that night caused a debate between, well, two of us.
The man who beat Hitler is from your town, so obviously, as they have done, you put up a statue to him. But then it turns out that he's an even bigger mass murderer, so do you take it down?
It's tricky, that one. It's very tricky.
Can we talk about our cars?
No.
Well, I'm not interested in the war.
Well, it's more than the war, Hammond. This is sort of a pivotal bit of 20th century history. It affected the whole world.
Right, well, I'm off to bed.
What?
I'm off to bed.
You're to bed?
I'm going to bed. I'll see you in the morning.
We must have bored him because he's left some of his gin and tonic.
After some more considered debate about the town's Stalin problems, I had an brainwave. The next morning, as we were saddling up, Richard Hammond had a question.
Why have you put Nigel Mansell's head on my bonnet?
I thought you'd like it. You know, British racing driver, British car, thought it'd be appropriate.
It's a bold statement, isn't it?
So you've got a famous Brummie in the car and on the front of the car.
Nigel Mansell must have been a big name round here. A lot of people looking at him.
Our next destination was a racetrack 70 miles away. And because James and I had racist sat-navs, we were taking guidance from the man up front, which was a mistake.
Hammond, we've definitely been round here before.
If you wanted me to be in charge of navigation, you shouldn't have glued Nigel Mansell's head to my bonnet.
Why are we going so slowly? I mean, I'm being overtaken by trucks.
Well, Nigel Mansell's head gets in the way of road signs, and I have to sort of crane round him to see them, and I don't want to miss them. Nigel Mansell's head gets in the way of road signs, and I have to sort of crane round him to see them, and I don't want to miss them.
Oh no. Oh my god.
You stupid idiot! No!
Oh, for God's sake.
Oh my god!
Oh no.
Having parted company with James's fan club, we eventually arrived at the racetrack. Built in the days of communism, it hosted some terrible and boring races until the Soviet Union and it fell apart. A few years ago, though, it was brought back to life.
Very low! Oh, look at this. Drifting with the traction control off.
That will do. Right! Oh, God. It is quite scary through here. Drive fast.
The DB11 was the first Aston I've ever driven that felt good on a track.
Let's do this.
Ah, Richard Hammond driving around in Chatsworth House here.
Oh, bugger!
Go.
Meanwhile, in the BMW, I too had been leaning on the electronics.
Previously on the road, I had this set up in my version of Sport, which you can... But now, I have it in Sport Plus.
Let's do this.
The four-wheel steering and the 8 Series is exactly what you'd expect.
Right then, let's go. It's easy. It's a BMW. It feels like a BMW.
And the four-wheel steering and the 8 Series is exactly what you'd expect.
Go.
And the four-wheel steering and the 8 Series is exactly what you'd expect.
Go. it's a BMW. It feels like a BMW.
It's so easy, in fact, that while going past the pits,
Here we go!
Eventually, we pitted to see how...
Go on, then.
Right. I've seen how fast you...
Get a bloody move on.
Thing is, this is quite an interesting test because...
Don't need a Waz. I don't need a Waz.
Here comes a really dangerous bed.
Slight slow there.
Danger.
Oh no!
Get faster. Pow! Pow!
Oh God, it's interfering.
Come on. Come on.
I'm not thinking about it. I'm just not thinking about it.
Need a wee. Braking hard. Oh, it's worse going through the corners because it all sloshes to one side. We're off.
Come on, come on, come on. Oh. Now this bit is really scary. Hey, hey, take it. Keep going. Rubbish. Gotta keep the pressure on. Oh my God!
That'll do. Just, can't run. It's gonna happen. What? Who's in there? James!
Bugger off, I'm having a Waz.
Hurry up!
I'm having a Waz.
Just hurry up, I'm going to go in a minute. Right, that's it, let me in. Oh, God, there's more. Oh, God.
It's just awful. When
Oh,
you...
listen, mate, James is in there, And I'm first. You ain't getting in ahead of me.
Fine, relax.
There's no way.
It is awful, though, when you get to the door, your body's saying, yes, time to go, but then you can't.
Stop talking. Why are you bothered anyway?
Well, I solved the problem, second corner.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
James.
I'm having a waz.
Yes, I know, I've got the times. It's quite interesting. You were a second slower on that lap.
I'm desperate for a slash.
Do you think you were faster or slower?
I don't care.
Richard Hammond. Your original lap, 2 minutes 4.8.
Oh.
Your new lap,
Stop talking.
2 minutes
Yes, whatever.
0.5. You were slower as well.
I was concentrating on not doing what you've done.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I did what I did. Look at that. How interesting is that? Exactly the same. I mean, I was basically...
James! Hurry up!
The next morning, we went for a drive round Tbilisi, one of the coolest cities we'd ever been to. We then found a flea market and decided to test the boot space in our Grand Tourers by picking up a few souvenirs.
I'm not sure they would have been able to win a war like this.
This is a Russian wall clock. It says Moscow on the dial. It works.
Is it a Soviet one?
Yeah, a Soviet cine camera. Now, come on. How much is the record player?
We're going to do a selfie.
Another way that they've captured the... How much is the record player?
We're going to do a selfie.
Another way that they've captured the lustfulness of the lady dog and the wistfulness of James.
Having done our shopping, Hammond and I were soon back at our cars and filling up the boots.
What have you bought?
Giant pair of jugs. Georgian wine jugs.
Do you know what the Georgian is for wine jugs? No. Norks.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
So you've got 2 giant Norks.
Yep. A guitar and a clock, and I'm very pleased with the purchases. What's with the trombone or whatever it is?
Well, it won't fit. With my record player and my bird and my gas mask.
That's a striking piece. We'll put it on the back seat.
Look, small.
Go on, the back seat will accommodate that. Look.
He's going to be critical.
Oh my God!
There you go. Told you you would.
Do Aston Martin describe that as a back seat?
Yes.
I wouldn't call it a leather pouch.
Anyway, the interesting... Yes.
I wouldn't call it a leather pouch.
Anyway, the interesting thing about the Aston Martin is... I've got quite a lot to say.
I need to get out now.
At this point, James came back after a very ambitious shopping trip.
Could you hold the porcupine, please? Yak goes in first.
How big is that boot?
It is actually really big.
It's unnecessarily big,
It's
actually.
too much boot.
It's a Grand Tourer. It's for taking luggage, as you said only the other day. His master's voice will go there. And then the Spanish man of war.
I then came up with a plan to get rid of what wouldn't fit in my car.
I bought you a present.
You're a musical man. That's very thoughtful of him, actually.
Thank you.
With our souvenirs loaded up, we got back on the road.
Just waste of time. This will be good.
Annoying. Oh my god!
At the next town, May and I wanted to pull over, and Hammond didn't.
It's all very nice jollying around, but these are GT cars. We've got to cover miles in them. We've got miles to go. We need to get a move on.
The town, however, was called Ganja. So obviously May and I wanted to experience the architecture.
Can we stop stopping off to look at things? The whole point of this trip is to prove that these powerful GT cars can devour continents, and we're not devouring any miles.
Ew.
But we need to get going.
You do know that these aren't actually quicker than any other type of car?
What?
No, in the real world. I mean, these feel great. That's why we like them. It's nice having a powerful car, etc. But in the real world, they don't go any faster or slower than any other type of car.
They go faster.
They
They
faster.
don't.
What, those larders we've been overtaking endlessly since we got here, you're saying that my twin-turbocharged Aston Martin is no faster than them?
Not in the real world. I'll demonstrate it to you tomorrow.
Oh, God.
Right, May, what is your thinking?
Well, I've bought this Renault 9, it's the GTL. And I've flown Abby out to drive it. We're going to drive 50 miles to a place called the Garden of Paradise.
Why can't we just go where we're going?
Because I just said we're going to the Garden of Paradise. It'll be nice. So Abby gets a 2-minute head start. You won't be able to catch her.
Oh, well.
You won't.
She has a 2-minute head start,
Yes.
and you think we can't catch her up in 50 miles?
Exactly.
That's not in good condition.
It wasn't very expensive. Start the engine, please.
Oh, well.
well.
Oh, we're in trouble now.
Right, you ready?
Purrs like a kitten.
Oh.
In 3, 2, 1, go! Professional racing driver.
That's it. She's good. She's good.
You've bought a dog.
It doesn't work.
Well,
18 seconds.
Stop sounding excited about this ridiculous escapade.
2, 1, begin.
hello. Hello, how are you?
That's rubbish. I don't like it. Come on, Carl.
Whoops. That was brilliant.
Oh yeah. Not very nice.
Looking good.
Oh, dearie me.
Come on. Oh. It's an idiotic thing, it really is.
No offence, Abby, but we're not having it.
The finish line at the Garden of Paradise was close. And as we entered the outskirts, the patio of paradise, Abbey was in sight. The race we knew would be ours, but then it turned out that actually the finish line was in the 14th century.
Oh, my word. In narrow, very narrow.
Oh, I don't know how much a carbon fibre chin spoiler is on one of these, but I bet it's a lot.
By this stage, I knew I'd lost, so I needed to come up with an excuse.
Leave the head. A hat.
This is not Bentley country now. This is really Land Rover territory. James May, you are a bloody idiot.
Sit rep. Man arrived at the window, took 30 units of currency away, and I now have this hat.
Eventually, Hammond and I found Abby's victorious Renault at the finish line. And then, what was definitely several hours later, May turned up.
Oh, here he is.
Oh, God.
Who won then?
We did.
Did you?
No, we didn't. Well, he went hat shopping.
I did. Look.
Took him
Really?
ages choosing that one. Honestly, we must have been... How long were we hat shopping? Must have been a good half hour to get the right one.
Well, half an hour with the black one, and then I didn't like it.
That does not happen by accident. That sort of thing takes time.
With James's unrealistic real-world test out of the way, we continued heading east.
Okay, God. God, what I'm doing.
Oh, for God's sake. Oh, my God. things a car has to excel at to be a good GT car. Luxury, comfort, power, style. Make for just a good car of any sort. And this new Bentley Continental GT is a very, very, very good GT car. I'm gonna say it. This thing is a must.
Here we go! Get a bloody move on.
It's quiet, it's unobtrusive, but then you just knock it down a few and give it a bit of shoot.
Away.
Right then, let's go. See, it becomes sonorous, its voice becomes more heartfelt, and it tingles through the steering wheel and through my buttocks. It's lovely. And the other thing, and I know this is going to sound a little bit sort of hashtag first world consideration.
Hurry up! Let's do this. Get out of the way.
It gives us a chance at least to say how good
Get a bloody move on.
No, terrible disappointment for him. It's time to end. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
is it.
So you've got 2 giant Norks.
Yep, a guitar and a clock, and I'm very pleased with the purchases. What's with the trombone or whatever it is?
Here we go!
Yes.
I wouldn't call it a leather pouch.
Anyway, the interesting thing about the Aston Martin is... I've got quite a lot to say.
I need to get out now.
At this point, James came back after a very ambitious shopping trip.
Could you hold the porcupine, please? Yak goes in first.
How big is that boot?
It is actually really big.
It's unnecessarily big, actually.
Too much boot.
It's a Grand Tourer. It's for taking luggage, as you said only the other day. His master's voice.
Let's do this.
With our souvenir...